So this morning I want to spend a few minutes and talk to you about really what's at the base of everything that we're doing here. You know, I sit up here and I talk about all these different things and all these different ways and all these different tools and everything that we can use in terms of our spiritual tools, awareness, and everything else like that. But what's at the base of all of it? One word. And we'll talk about the different words you can use for it, but ultimately what it comes down to is God. What's God got to do with it? The old Tina Turner song came to my mind as I was preparing for this. What has God got to do with it? It's really simple. Everything. Everything. Spirit, source, life, everything. At the basis of everything that we're doing here, that is what we come from. That is what we do. That is what we connect with. Always. God. So while I'll sit up here and we have conversations and we read all the books and we do all the exercises and we do the meditations and we do the prayers and everything that we do, what does it really come down to? What's underneath all of it? God. God. Right? Myrtle Fillmore knew this as much as anybody. I am loving the process I'm going through right now to become a minister at Unity, and I get to explore some really fun books, and I've shared this with some of you, that there's some classics in there that I've never had a chance to get into. And Myrtle in the book, How to Let God Help You, talks about this. What I love about Myrtle is, for those of you that have studied Charles, you'll understand that Charles can get a bit technical. How many people would agree with that? Yeah, he kind of gets technical. What I love about Myrtle, she really cuts through all of that. She really, really does. And I've always been in love with Myrtle, but now I'm even in love with her a little bit more. And so I'm going to share some thoughts with you from the book, How to Let God Help You. And in the chapter about fundamental principles. So Myrtle's saying, hey, keep it simple. Remember last week when I talked to you? I said, keep it simple. This thing is not that complicated. Yes, I know our egos will try and make it complicated. It is not that complicated. It's really not that complicated. The only one that makes it complicated is us. God doesn't make it complicated, or whatever you want to call it. So Myrtle says, call this great creative principle by any of its wonderful names. God, life, mind, or spirit. So Myrtle doesn't care what you're calling it. You can call it whatever you want to call it. We have a tendency to call it God, right? Then she goes on to say, which is interesting. So again, this is from a historical perspective. This is back in the 1920s, 1930s. Spiritual science, that's what she used to call it, after starting off with the generally accepted basic principle, God is all. Can't keep it more simple than that. God is all. Keep straight on in pure and unadulterated logic. In other words, what she's saying, don't complicate it. It's really simple. The only thing that there is God, and that's it. There is nothing else. That's it. And you're going to go, well, wait a minute, Mike, I don't understand that. How can you just sit there and say God is all? Be patient. We're going to get there. Okay? So then Myrtle goes on to say, stop every single thought but the thought that Spirit or God is all. It's simple. Just acknowledge God in everything that is going on. Everything. No matter what the appearance may look like. No matter what. I want you to remember, if you think about it, in the Bible, at the beginning, what happens? God creates the heaven and the earth and everything else God created, right? And then God stood back, and in Genesis it says, God saw all that was made, and indeed it was very good. So what is that really saying? God created everything that was good. And everything else that was created probably came from somewhere else, is a nice way to put it. I would add to that, probably in this dimension, probably from guess who? Us. Us, humans. Humans, right? Yeah. So Myrtle goes on to say about God, God is good. Cool. But then she goes on to say God is love. God is truth. God is life. If it's not any of those, then it is not real. And in the book, she spends some time talking about what is real and what is unreal. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then she goes on to say, and I'm going to read this. She kind of adds a couple of other things that us Unity folks are used to hearing about. Now, that which is all must be omnipresent, must be everywhere. So God's everywhere. Everywhere. That which is all must contain all wisdom, hence it must be omniscient. And God also must be all-powerful or omnipotent. I got those in different order. So God is all these amazing things, right? So God is everywhere. God is all-present. God is all-powerful. And God is all-knowing. Not a bad place to start. Not bad, right? She goes on to say, and she starts logically putting this together, and I want you to follow her line of thinking because I love it, right? She starts off with, it puts fairly to everyone's questions, which from their own premises will each admit but one answer. Spiritual science said, if God is all and God means good, Genesis must read, in the beginning God created, good created. Therefore, can God or good create evil? And then she goes on to say, well, if God is love, then in the beginning love created. Can love create hatred and torment? Okay. And then if God is truth, in the beginning truth created. Can truth create error? Could God do that? So she goes on to say, if God is life, then in the beginning life created. Can life create death? And she goes on to say, that which is not of love and by love is not real. God is truth, so true, creator of all that is real, and that which is not of truth and by. So what she's saying is all these things that we're bringing up, if it's not, then it's not real. It's not real. God is life, therefore life is great, the great creator and cause of all that is real, and that which is not of life and by life is not real. And so Myrtle's going around and around with this idea of what is real and what is not real. In other words, from spirit, from the divine, what is real and what is not real? And what are we walking around thinking about and talking about? And the answer is this stuff real? And ultimately, what is Myrtle saying? No. No, it's not real. If it's anything else than what we're talking about, life, truth, goodness, death, in a core level, from the pure essence of your being, is it real? And the answer, what Myrtle is saying, is absolutely not. Absolutely not. Right? They're not real. And you're saying, well, wait a minute, Mike, come on. Are you just living in denial? Are you not picking up a newspaper and seeing what's going on outside? Of course I am. In this center, in this church, we don't do denial. We don't deny reality on this third plane dimension. But the difference is we just don't focus on it. Because we understand that at the base of our being, in our divinity, we stand in our power, we stand in our truth, and we acknowledge what is real. And anything else, we just don't acknowledge its truth. And what does that mean? Well, what it means is from a spiritual standpoint, those things that we're talking about, everything else, it doesn't have any power over us. When we stand in our strength, when we stand in our divinity, when we stand in that pure essence, when we do what Jesus Christ taught us and other masters taught us, what are we doing? We stand in our divinity. These other things don't impact us. They're not real. We don't give them power. In other words, we don't pay attention to them. We don't. It doesn't mean that things don't come up. It doesn't mean that life doesn't happen. It doesn't mean you pick up the paper and ignore everything. But you sit there, and when you look at it, and here's what the difference is, and I want you to get this. When Myrtle had tuberculosis and she healed herself, and others have done the same thing, instead of spending every ounce of their energy worrying about the problems and everything else that was going on, and oh my God this, oh my God that, oh my God this, oh my God that, and they looked outside of themselves, what these few souls have done, what they have done is they started off with the premise that says, wait a minute, I'm going to focus on here instead. Myrtle and Charles and other masters understood that there was a piece of them that was absolutely perfect. It was divine perfection. And they focused on that divine perfection, and they would not waver from it. They refused to acknowledge or pay attention to anything else, anything. And they would focus on that divine perfection, and that's how they pulled it off. That's what they did. That's what made them so powerful. It's not that the other stuff didn't come up. I mean, let's face it. Myrtle had tuberculosis. Took her 2 years. But what did she do in those 2 years? She refused to acknowledge that her body was weak and frail and didn't have the divine seed. And instead what she did was she focused on the perfection. That's what she did. And she healed. And then thousands of other people healed when they followed her. Tens of thousands of people. Including Charles, by the way. Including Charles. What did she do? She quit paying attention to everything else, and she focused on the perfection, that divine seed within her. That's what she did. She's quoted, "Shut out of your mind that which looks real. Quit looking at it, because when you do that, you're giving it power. Quit looking at it and hold firmly to the thought of what is real. What's real? My divinity is real. What's real? God is real. What's real is life. What's real is truth. What's real is my divinity. That's what's real. That's what's powerful. And they wouldn't waver from it. Hold firmly to the thought of what is real. Stop thinking evil is real. Stop. Just stop. Think of good as all. Stop thinking matter is real. Everything else, right? Matter. Know that spirit is all. In other words, God is everywhere. God is all. Little tweaks. Where are you focusing your attention? Are you focusing on everything else? Or are you going to have the courage to stand in your divinity and refuse to accept or acknowledge anything else? I'm telling you, when you read this book, and this might be the book that we cover in Bill's class, when you read it, you'll understand Myrtle is on fire. And she just flat out won't accept anything else. God's all there is. There's a part of God that's in you. God created all that's good. Life is all there is. There is no lack, and a few other principles. And she would not waver. She would not back down. Wouldn't do it. My belief is Jesus did the same thing. It's not a belief, it's a knowing. For me, he would do the same thing. He refused to look at everything else that everybody would say and go, well, it is what it is. And I guess I just have to accept that. And I guess I just have to accept who and what I am, a little lonely human being here on this planet that doesn't have any power, doesn't have anything else, I guess I just got to go along with the crowd. And guess what? That is not what Jesus said in any way, shape, or form. The Father and I are one. Isn't that what Jesus said? The Father and I are one. God and I are one. I think it's one of his most powerful, simple messages to remind us who and what we are and to remind us that we have that seed within us. But you know what? Here's the thing. There's work to do. I hate to break the news to you, but everybody gets so excited when they come into Unity. Oh, isn't it great? Unity's got this amazing message. It's beautiful. It's so fantastic. And it is beautiful. It is fantastic. But you know what? You got work to do. Hate to break the news to you, but I promise you this. It's not like what happens is all of a sudden you go, oh, this is great, and there's this magic wand that's getting waved and everything is fine and dandy. That is not the way that it works. When you decide to pick up this thought or this idea of your divinity, then what happens is, and you make a commitment, I am going to make a commitment, this is going to be a significant part of my life. That's a beautiful commitment. It's a beautiful commitment to yourself, to your family, to this community. It's really what we do here. We're going to be talking about it in a minute. But when you make that commitment to yourself, that also means, guess what? You got some work to do. It's not like God all of a sudden sent us down here and said, hey, just do whatever you want to do and just say a few prayers and everything is going to be great. I'm sorry, that's just not my experience. I don't mean to insult anybody, but my experience has not been, hey, just take care of it for me, God. Is that okay? It doesn't work that way. My experience is that I came down here to learn some things. I went through the first part of my life in some pretty crazy times like we all did. And as a result of those crazy times, there was some stuff that was stuck deep down inside of me. I cannot tell you how many times I said the prayer, please, God, just fix it. And my experience has been, it's getting fixed. But the only way that it's getting fixed is when I sit down with God and there's this thing that's going on, this relationship, this beautiful, amazing, incredible experience that's not like anything any book has ever taught me, ever. It's an experience where I'm communicating with this thing that's called God, source, life, and I'm sitting there. And I've got this relationship going on, and there's this dynamic that's going back and forth. And the more courageous I get to look at my garbage, is the nicest way that I can put it in this church. I would call it something else if I was out there, right? But when I'm able to look at my own garbage, then what happens is God goes, yes, now I can help. Now you will let me come in there with you so we together can take care of this and start working on it and change your life for the better. That is what the journey is like. That is what the experience is, and that's why it's so much different than, I would say, a more traditional route. And again, I'm not saying anything about other traditional things in different ways. I'm just saying this way to me has been way more powerful. But it came down to a responsibility, me looking at my own stuff with God, with source, with life. That has been the difference. Coming back to the concept of something real and not real. For all you Course in Miracles fans out there, at the beginning of the Course in Miracles, what does it say? Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. That's what it says. Herein lies the peace of God. What is that really saying? It's just saying really simple. It's saying the same thing that Myrtle said. It's the acknowledgement of the same thing. God is real. Love, trust, abundance, all those cool things. Anything else like that isn't real. Nothing real can be threatened. You can't threaten that. It cannot be threatened. Nothing can threaten that. Nothing unreal exists. Doesn't exist. Doesn't. No matter how loud. Doesn't it get loud at times? Doesn't it get loud? Yeah, it gets loud. It absolutely gets loud. It doesn't matter. Why? Myrtle told us. Pay attention to what you're thinking about. Are you thinking about everything else that's going on out there? Or are you paying attention to what's true? What are you paying attention to? What are you paying attention to, right? I love this. Put off the habits of thinking lying thoughts. In other words, quit thinking about unreality, lack, limitation, death, All that stuff. Think of life, truth, and love as the only reality. Why? Because that's what's real. That's what's real. We train the mind to righteousness by beginning back at its very source and stopping every thought. She didn't say most thoughts. She said every thought. But the right one. What is the right one? Truth, life, love, good, God is all. That's what she did. Again, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Right? Keep it simple. I want to read something else for Myrtle because, again, to my understanding of Myrtle and her life and why she was so powerful, because it all came down to the relationship she had with God, the relationship she had with God and her divinity. Everything came down to that. My suggestion, and really my experience, has been the same. Everything comes down to your relationship with God. Even if you don't understand it, even if it scares you, I get it, there's some people that are scared. Even if, and this is where I would challenge some people that are like, whoa, wait a minute. I would seriously challenge you to say if there's like an issue or something going on with that thing, to really look back at what you were originally taught about God. Because my understanding and my experiences with God is this amazing, loving, caring presence that is here to help you, to guide you, to love you, even in our darkest of times. And if that's not the experience you're having, then my belief is that we were probably taught something that isn't true. And yeah, I'm going to be bold enough to say that. I don't think it's true. Just because of the relationship I have with this amazing thing. And my hope and prayer for you, honestly, is that you can have that same type of a relationship. We all deserve that because that's where we came from. And when that is wide open and we don't have a bunch of garbage put onto us by society that tells us who we are, why we are, how we should be, what it should look like, what we should say, what we shouldn't say, and we actually just walk out in the woods and say, hey, God, how about you and I just kind of do this little conversation thing and let me get to know and understand you the way that I get to know and understand you. When I was 19 years old, I said a very simple prayer. The simple prayer was, God, I don't want to learn about you through a book. I don't want to learn about you through another human being. I want to have the experience of you on my own so that I will understand it. It was one of the greatest decisions and one of the best questions I've ever asked in my life. It's taken me on a spiritual journey far beyond anything I could have ever dreamed of, and that journey continues to this day. Why? Because I took everything and I said, no, I just want the real experience. Come through me in the way that I will understand you. Let me experience what everybody and all the masters have talked about at the highest level. Really let me have that experience. And the amazing thing is, guess what? God showed up. God showed up. It's impacted my life ever since then in such a way that the only thing I want to do is share that with each and every one of you. And I want to scream it from the mountaintops. And when I see somebody say something about all the other things they say about God, my heart just gets heavy. It really, really does. And again, there's no judgment there, but it's like to have an experience with this thing called God in your own way and have that true experience, that true expression come through and see what that feels like, there is nothing like that. And I don't care if it looks like you taking a walk through the forest. I don't care if it looks like you painting. I don't care if it looks like you playing on the piano. Because that expression called the divine comes through each and every one of us a little bit differently. But when it's there, it is, I promise you, undeniable. It's undeniable. You don't need anybody to sit there and tell you about what it's supposed to feel like or how it's supposed to feel. I don't need anybody to tell me what it's like to have a conversation with God and actually there be a response back. I don't need that experience. I don't need anybody. I know what that experience is like. And when you can stand in that space, I'm telling you, it is absolutely, it's expressionless. There's nothing that you need to explain to everybody because you're going to walk away from it and you'll just know. This beautiful, beautiful, serene knowing. So, Myrtle says, God is helping you now to know that God is the truth. God is showing you that your best dreams are coming true, that you are to forget the past and its disappointments, that you are to do everything as though you were doing it for Spirit. Spirit is great. Who is interested in you and who can help you? Spirit will help supply your needs and will show you how to keep happy and healthy. So let me get this right. We get to come down here, we get to hang out, and we can have this amazing connection with this thing called God. And yeah, we can sit there and talk about all the tools, and we can talk about all the things we talk about up here, right? And it's kind of fun. Let's just be real. It's kind of fun. At least I have fun with it. But ultimately, what does it matter? What matters is you sit down and spend a little time and connect with this thing called your divinity or God or whatever you want to call it. I don't get hung up in the words, and my impression is, neither does God. Neither does God. Right? Awesome. So some final thoughts. First of all, God is all there is. Remember, go down to the basics. That's all that exists. Anything that doesn't exist, anything outside of that, basically isn't real. God made everything good. Anything else is not real. It has no power over us, none. Unless, of course, we give it power. How do we give it power? How do we give those other things power? By paying attention to it and talking about it. That's how we give that stuff power. Paying attention to it and talking about it. Affirmations help. Here's what I'm going to tell you about this one affirmation. It is one of the primary affirmations in the entire Unity movement, and there's a reason for it. I will challenge you, if you'll do this affirmation for 3 weeks, at least 2 or 3 times a day, just to remember, I'm telling you, there will be an energetic shift that you will experience because all of a sudden you're starting to play with this thing called God on a very real physical level. And you'll start to have this thing that'll start to happen within you. And I would just encourage you to consider it. So, why don't we do this together? There is only one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life. God, the good, omnipotent. God bless. Thank you.